Hello students. So today we are continuing with the part 2 of the topic on insulin. Hope you have all gone through the first part wherein we have just had an introduction about the physiology of insulin. So today's class is very important from the pharmacological point of view because we are going to cover the core areas of this topic in today's session. So in today we are going to discuss about the insulin preparations, the different types of insulin preparations, and in that we'll be also discussing about insulin analogs, the routes and sites of administration of insulin preparations, adverse reactions and drug interactions of these preparations. So before we go into the preparations, we just have a recap of the physiological insulin secretion, which I had mentioned in the previous section also. So you all know that the physiological insulin secretion consists of two parts. That is the basal secretion, which is occurring continuously at a low level throughout the day. So you can see this is the basal secretion, which is occurring continuously at a low level throughout the day. And then you have got the bolus secretion, that is the rapid secretion which is occurring post meals, that is post breakfast, post lunch and post dinner. So you can see the bolus secretions are occurring rapidly. They have got a defined peak. You can see the peak here and they're coming down very fast. So only for a short duration this bolus secretion is occurring. So this is the physiological insulin secretion. So now why is it important when we are discussing about the insulin preparation? This is because any ideal insulin preparation, it should be able to mimic the physiological insulin secretion. So you already, I've told you in the previous section that one of the pharmacological modalities of treatment for diabetes is insulin. So when we are using the insulin preparations, they should be able to mimic the physiological insulin secretion. For example, if we are using an insulin preparation to mimic the basal secretion, it should be having a continuous action, it should be having a low level of insulin and it should be acting throughout the day. Similarly, if you're giving up insulin preparation to mimic the bolus secretion, it should have a rapid onset of action, it should have a defined peak and it should be only acting for a short duration of time. That is the ideal insulin preparation which will be mimicking the bolus or the basal secretion. So just keep this aspect in mind. Now we'll go to the insulin preparations. So we'll divide the insulin preparations based on the source. So first we have got the conventional insulins or the older preparations. They were derived or they were obtained from the bovine, that is the beef, or porcine or the pig pancreas. So already I told you in the previous class that porcine or the pig pancreas is more homologous to the human insulin. And the advantages with them is that it is very cheap, but the main problem is that they are antigenic and they can cause allergic reactions in patients. And why are they antigenic? This is because they contain more than 1%, that is more than 10,000 parts per million of other antigenic proteins like proinsulin, pancreatic proteins, etc. And these can be causing allergic manifestations or hypersensitivity reactions in the patients. That is because of this reason they are not very popularly used in developed countries. So though in India, because they are cheap, we are still having or resorting to such insulins also, but in developed countries this is more or less outdated. The next came in 1970s, purified insulin. Now these were insulins which were purified by some purification techniques like gel filtration technique and ion exchange chromatography. Now these techniques removed these antigenic proteins from the insulin and these were more purified and hence they had less antigenic action and caused less allergy. So included under this, you have got single peak insulins and you have got the monocomponent insulin. So monocomponent insulin is usually abbreviated as MC. So these are more purified types of insulins which are causing less of allergy, and they are also causing less resistance, insulin resistance. So it is often seen that when insulin is taken for some time, the patient may develop resistance to insulin. That is more seen with this conventional or the older preparation. It is not much seen with the purified insulin, and they cause less of injection site lipodystrophy. That's one of the adverse drug reactions which you will be learning later. So this is very less when you are using this kind of purified insulin. That is monocomponent insulin or the single peak insulin. Then later on in 1980s came the human insulin, which was prepared by the recombinant DNA technology. So they contain the same amount of number of amino acids as in the human insulin, and they were prepared by recombinant DNA technology by modifying the E. coli bacteria or the yeast, or by another technique wherein they were having an enzymatic modification of porcine insulin. So by these techniques, the human insulin was brought into use. Now this is having no allergy at all. It causes less insulin resistance and is also associated with less injection site lipodystrophy. And some reports claim that they have got somewhat rapid absorption from the subcutaneous site also. However, because of the cost considerations, they are more popular in developed countries, but in other countries also these are coming into more use because they cause less allergy, and they are very much resorted to in for use in cases of pregnant women with diabetes. So that is a condition where we do not want any kind of allergy. So human insulins are very much preferred for conditions like pregnancy. Otherwise also they are becoming more and more popular because of these advantages. Now, based on the pharmacokinetics, that is onset of action, the peaking of the action, and the duration, we have got three types. The short-acting insulin, which includes regular insulin, otherwise called as the plain insulin or the soluble insulin, but we often refer to it as the regular insulin. Then you have got the intermediate insulin. Under that, you have got two types, that is lenti insulin, insulin zinc suspension, and neutral protamine head-on, that is NPH or isophane insulin. We also have got a long-acting preparation, that is protamine zinc, that is PZI, but we will not be discussing that here because it is no longer available for use or sale now. That is why we are going to only discuss about the short acting, that is regular insulin, and intermediate acting insulin, that is lenti insulin, and the neutral protamine head-on or the NPH or the isophane insulin. So based on the source, you have got the conventional insulin, purified insulin, and human insulin, and based on the pharmacokinetics, you have got short acting, regular insulin, intermediate insulins. So this is more important to classify insulins based on their duration on the PK is more important, as you will be seeing in the coming slides. So first we'll be take up the regular or the soluble insulin. So what are these? They are solutions of insulin at neutral pH which are stabilized by small amount of zinc. So they are soluble solutions of insulin at neutral pH. In the injection site, in the injection solution, these molecules self-aggregate around the zinc ion. So the insulin molecules are now present as an aggregate around the zinc ions in the injection solution. So what happens when you give this preparation by the subcutaneous route? So on subcutaneous injection, the insulin monomers, so they are present as the aggregates. So from those aggregates, insulin monomers are released by dilution so that the absorption occurs very slowly. Okay, so but after the IV injection, this is very fast. So, but most of the times we are giving this injection by the subcutaneous route. So, on subcutaneous injection, you can see that since the monomers are released very slowly, the absorption occurs slowly. So onset of action of this type of insulin takes about 0.5 hours. The peak action is in 2 to 3 hours, and the duration of action is 6 to 8 hours. So just compare with what I told you in the first one. So short-acting insulin is supposed to be mimicking the bolus secretion of the insulin, physiological insulin secretion. Now, when I told you about the bolus, it should be rapid in action. It should be having a defined peak and it should have a short duration of action. But here you can see when after giving, it will take about 0.5 hours to start its action. So it's not a rapid onset of action. The peak is occurring in 2 to 3 hours and it is acting for 6 to 8 hours. Ideally, the physiological bolus should not be acting to 6 to 8 hours. It should come down very fast. So in that aspect, the regular or soluble insulin is not really mimicking the physiological bolus insulin secretion. Now, because it is starting its action only after 0.5 hours, so usually you have to give it like half an hour before the meal, so that by the time you finish the meal, it can start acting. So now what are the drawbacks? Already I have discussed that. When injected just before a meal, this preparation creates mismatch between need and availability to result in early postprandial hyperglycemia and late postprandial hypoglycemia. Postprandial means after food. So soon after food, what do you have? You have a rise in the glucose level. That is called as the postprandial hyperglycemia. And then the insulin will be acting on it, and then late you will have sometime you will have a postprandial hypoglycemia. So why are we saying here? So see, if the insulin was released soon after the meal or was starting to act soon after the meal, you will not have a postprandial hyperglycemia because insulin will bring it down. But what is happening in this case, if you are just injecting it into after soon after the meal or just before the meal, it will take about 0.5 hours to start its action. So in that period, you will have a postprandial hyperglycemia. And ideally the action should have come down after some hours, but this is acting for how much time? 6 to 8 hours. So later on it will go to postprandial late hypoglycemia, late postprandial hypoglycemia. So these concepts are a little difficult for you to understand at the UG level, but you just remember the terminologies. It causes an early postprandial hyperglycemia and a late postprandial hypoglycemia. These are the problems with regular insulin. It also doesn't provide a basal level of insulin in the interdigestive period. That is obvious. It is only like trying to mimic the bolus insulin secretion, and that also it is not doing completely. One other disadvantage of this preparation is that the effect of the preparation can vary with the dose, the site of injection, and the exercise. If you give a larger dose, the action will be longer. And with exercise also, and the site of injection also, the action or the duration of action seems to be changing. So these things can affect the action, and it can be causing a lot of problems in patient control of the hyperglycemia. Then we have got the intermediate acting insulin or the retard preparations. Now the retard preparations are prepared by rendering the insulin insoluble by complexing it either with protamine, that is a small molecular basic protein, or by precipitating with excess zinc and increasing its particle size. There are the two ways by which retard preparations are made. So first we have got the lenti insulin or the insulin zinc suspension. It is a 7:3 ratio of ultra lenti and semi lenti. So ultra lenti is a crystalline long acting insoluble form of insulin, and semi lenti is an amorphous short acting insulin. They are not available separately, and the ratio of these two in the proportion of 7:3 is called as the lenti insulin. So here the onset of action is 1 to 2 hours and peaks at 8 to 10 hours, and the duration is 12 to 20 hours. So before that, let me tell you that intermediate acting insulin is supposed to be mimicking the basal physiological secretion. But you can see here, the onset is 1 to 2 hours, in peak in 8 to 10 hours, and duration 12 to 20 hours. So the picture I showed you of the basal secretion, it doesn't have a peak. It is acting throughout the day. It is not having a peak, and it is at a low level. This is not so here. It is having a peak at 8 to 10 hours. It's not even acting till the full day. 24 hours action is not there. So this is not really mimicking the physiological basal secretion. So similar one other intermediate acting insulin is the NPH or the isophane insulin, wherein the insulin is complex with the protamine, and it dissociates slowly and produces intermediate duration of action, the same onset, peak, and duration as the lenti insulin. but this has a very inconsistent way of acting, and usually the commercial preparations that you see in the market is this one is actually mixed with the regular insulin in the ratio of 70:30 or 50:50. Earlier you had separate vials wherein you had a regular insulin vial and you had an NPH vial, and they used to manually mix it in the ratio of 70:30 or 50:50. But now we have got pre-mixed syringes that contain the regular insulin and the NPH insulin in this ratio 70:30 or 50:50. Now, these are all more of a practical aspects of insulin therapy, and at this point of time, it might be slightly difficult for you people to understand. Now, I have just clubbed up everything. Short-acting insulin, you can see, it's supposed to be mimicking the bolus secretion, but is not ideally mimicking the bolus secretion. Intermediate one, supposed to be mimicking the basal secretion, but is not mimicking it ideally. You can see the onset, peak, and duration of all these types of insulin. Okay, so at this point, we can just discuss one thing that both that is whether it is porcine insulin or it is monocomponent insulin or human insulin, they can be available as regular insulin or they can be available as the isophane insulin. I'll just show you the examples of some of the brand names. This is not something that you don't have to by heart, but for your greater understanding, I'm showing you these examples. So one brand name is Actrapid MC. It contains monocomponent pork insulin, but it is a regular insulin. That is, it's having the onset of action 0.5 hours, peaking at 1 to 2 hours, and so on. Okay, and similarly, I have got another brand that is Insulatard. It is containing monocomponent pork insulin. That's a purified insulin, but based on its pK, it is a isophane insulin. Similarly, human Actrapid. It is a human insulin, but it is a regular one, that is, it's having based on its pK. Similarly, human insulin N is a human isophane insulin. And I told you we have got a pre-mixed syringes. So you have got human Mixtard, which contains human regular insulin 30% and human isophane insulin 70%. Similarly, you have got human Mixtard 50, human regular insulin 50%, and human isophane insulin 50%. These are some of the brand names which you often come across in your medicine department. So once when you go for a clinical posting later on, you can have a watch on all these things, and maybe you can also watch the case records to see how they are prescribed. Though it is too early for you to go into that aspects, but for greater understanding, and you can just refer those records also. Now, routes of administration. So all the insulins that I have mentioned so far, they are principally given by the subcutaneous injection. So many of you often make a mistake in the route of the administration. So just remember, it is given subcutaneously. It can be self-administered. Most of the times you would have seen people injecting on their like abdominal tissues and all, even on the arms and all. It is by the subcutaneous route, and the site and the injection needle, the one that is used, is having a length that the patient can inject by themselves, and even with a deeper penetration, it will not go beyond the subcutaneous tissue. The length is that much that it will just, with the maximum penetration also, it will not cross beyond the subcutaneous tissue. That is why it's very comfortable for self-injection. So you can see some of the sites where the subcutaneous injection is given. Lower abdomen, upper arms, then buttocks, upper outer thighs. These areas have a lot of subcutaneous tissue, and that is why these areas are preferred for injecting. And many times you have to keep on changing the sites of injection, because these areas become lipodystrophied. There is a lipodystrophy of the subcutaneous tissue with continuous injection in the same site. So you obviously advise the patient to change the sites of injection very frequently. Then IV also it is given, but only regular insulin is given by the IV route, and that also for an emergency situation like the diabetic ketoacidosis, about which you will be learning in the next class. So just remember, subcutaneously all the insulin preparations are given. IV route, regular insulin given by the IV route, that only for diabetic ketoacidosis. Otherwise, for all other indications, regular insulin for regular use, it is given by the subcutaneous route. Now we come to the next very important aspect. This is often asked in the exams, and it is very important also. The concepts may be slightly confusing to you, but you can try attempt to at least understand how much ever possible. So insulin analogs. So first, let us see what are those. These are molecules which are produced by genetic engineering, wherein the amino acid sequence in the human insulin is changed to alter its pharmacokinetics. So in the previous slides, I have shown you that though the regular insulin and the intermediate insulins were prepared, they were not mimicking the basal or the bolus secretion because of their pharmacokinetics. So this is an attempt to make insulin preparations which can mimic the physiological insulin secretions. So by changing their pharmacokinetics. However, they are binding the same insulin receptor and they produce the same effects. That is, their PK changes, but their pharmacodynamics is not changing. Let us see the examples. They are ultra short acting or the rapid acting. Okay, the short, we are not using the term short acting. We are using the term ultra short acting or the rapid acting. Examples are insulin lispro, aspart, glulisin. Long acting ones like glargine, detramer, and a newer one that is degludec. These are the examples. So what are the alterations that are made in these kinds of analogs which makes them, gives them some altered pharmacokinetics? So in the case of lispro, there is a reversal of proline and lysine at the amino acid levels at the beta chain of 28 and 29 positions. In case of insulin aspart, the proline at the 28th position of beta chain is replaced by aspartic acid. In the case of glulisin, the asparagine at B23 is replaced. Asparagine is replaced at B23, and glutamic acid replaces lysine at the 29th position of the beta B chain. Glargine has got two additional arginine residues at the carboxy terminus of B chain, and a glycine replaces asparagine at the 21st position of A chain. These are the genetic modifications that are made in these particular analogs. Now, why is the need for insulin analogs when we had insulins? So this I already have explained it throughout the time. This is mainly because the regular and the intermediate insulins do not mimic the physiological insulin secretion and often result in a mismatch between the requirement and the availability, and hence result in inadequate glycemic control. So I have already described to you what a basal secretion should be having and what a bolus. So bolus should be having a rapid onset, rapid peak, and short duration of action, whereas the basal insulin should be having a low basal concentration without a peak and should act for the whole day or for a long duration. And this is not being met by the regular and the intermediate insulins respectively. So this I have already told you, regular insulins, they dissociate very slowly because of they form the hexamers, and that is why you have got the delayed onset of action leading to postprandial hyperglycemia, and they keep on acting for a longer time than that is required, resulting in late postprandial hypoglycemia. And another thing is that they have to be given at least half an hour before the food, because that they can start acting soon after the food. So another problem is that if you have taken the regular insulin, you have to have your food within half an hour. Okay, so we cannot, in busy people who might sometimes miss a meal, they have taken the injection but they tend to miss the meal. This can cause a problem. So this is not very patient comfortable, because you have to take and you cannot even adjust the meals because already you have taken the injection, and so accordingly you have to have the meals. Also the action or the effect will be depending on the the dose that is given, the site of the injection, and the exercise. These are some of the defects of the regular insulin. But the rapid acting insulins, insulin analogs, you can see they do not form hexamers. So what happens? They will dissociate very fast into monomers, and they'll be having a rapid absorption. So you can see the action is within 10 to 20 minutes as compared to almost half an hour. So within 10 minutes of this injection, they can it starts acting. So it can just be given very just 5 minutes before the meal, or even after the meal also it can be given, because the onset of action is very fast. It peaks in 1 to 2 hours as compared to the other one, and duration of action comparatively less, 4 to 5 hours. It's not 6 to 8 hours like the regular one. So it is more like a physiological bolus secretion with a rapid onset of action, defined peak, and short duration of action. Can be injected just before or after, even after the meals, and so we can allow the adjustments of the insulin with the size of the meal. Suppose I'm taking less amount of food today, so I can actually adjust the insulin, because I can even take the insulin after the meal. But in the previous case, that is the regular insulin, you have already taken the insulin half an hour before the meal, so you cannot eat less or eat more. You have to actually, based on the insulin that you have taken, you have to have the food accordingly. This is having a better control of the mealtime glycemia, and it is not affected by the dose or the site of injection or the exercise. So these are more useful for very busy people like sports person or the movie stars. They might be having a very busy schedule, so this is very comfortable for them, because even if they miss because they can use it like because these people are they tend to miss their meals, or and so they can actually adjust according to the meal time or according to the meal they take. They can adjust the insulin. This is more comfortable for such type of people. You can see here Lispro versus regular. I've shown you the regular here, which is having slowly, it is coming its onset of action. It's not having a defined peak. You can see the peak is almost like a spread out, and it's acting for a long duration, that is 8 hours. So on the other hand, you can see Lispro, rapid onset, having a very defined peak and short duration of action. This is more mimicking the bolus physiological secretion. So similarly, you have got the intermediate acting insulin. I told you again, it is not mimicking the basal physiological secretion. And here you have the glargine, that is the analog, which will maintain low insulin levels uniformly for 24 hours with no peak. And these are called as the peakless insulins, and they tend to have less of nocturnal hypoglycemia. The intermediate insulins, because of their late peaking, they can cause a nocturnal hypoglycemia. And you can see here, it is also suitable for once daily dosing, and its absorption doesn't depend on the dose, site of injection, etc. And here you can see the comparison. See, NPH insulin, it's having a peak and it's acting like this. Okay, but the glargine, it is more or less, it is peakless insulin, and it's mimicking the the physiological basal secretion. It's acting almost continuously at a low level throughout the day. These are the advantages of the insulin analog. Okay, so the analogs are a very important short note. They're often asked. So in this session, I have actually explained it in a very detailed manner. You can actually go back to the slides again and again if you're not getting it in the first time. Okay, so now we're going to the last part of it, that is adverse effects of insulin. The first and the foremost adverse effect is hypoglycemia. Wherein the blood sugar level goes very low, and it can occur after a large dose. If you're giving a large dose and then maybe you're missing the meals and all, or following exercise, this can occur. So already you all know the symptoms of hypoglycemia. These include sympathetic overactivity symptoms like sweating, anxiety, palpitation, tremor, and later on neuroglycopenic symptoms like dizziness, headache, fatigue, hunger, mental confusion, seizures, coma. And these occur usually when the blood glucose level goes very low, that is less than 40 milligram per deciliter. So what is the immediate treatment for hypoglycemia? It is glucose that is given either orally, or if the patient is not able to take it orally, he has to be given IV injection of 25% dextrose 50 ml immediately. If suppose glucose is not available, glucagon can be given IM also, intramuscular or IV. That is one advantage of glucagon. It can be given IM also. So if the veins are not accessible, you can give glucagon. But on the other hand, glucagon is not very easily available in the casualty or the emergency setup as compared to glucose. So this is the reason why often you will see the patients are taking insulin. They'll be carrying these toffees and chocolates and sugar capsules and all with them. This is because the moment they feel that they are facing hypoglycemia, as they detect the symptoms like anxiety, palpitation, sweating, they can have a these capsules or sugar tablets very soon before the major symptoms set up. This is because and during the education of diabetic patients, they are educated how to detect the hypoglycemic symptoms. Now, there's another terminology called as the hypoglycemic unawareness. This is a very, very serious problem, and this often occurs in patients who are facing repeated episodes of hypoglycemia. There comes a point where the patient is unable to detect the hypoglycemia. He will not be aware. Okay, and that is usually occurring in patients whose nerves are affected, who are having this diabetic neuropathy. In those patients, they will not be able to detect the sympathetic overactivity symptoms like sweating, anxiety, and all. And this is a very, very dangerous situation because the therapy or the remedy will not be taken because the patient is unaware of the hypoglycemic episode. The other adverse effects are local reactions like swelling, erythema, stinging, which occur usually with the initial doses of insulin. And lipodystrophy of the subcutaneous fat can occur at the injected site, and so the patient has advised to change the site of injection. Allergy can occur in some patients, and this is very rare with the purified or the human insulins. That with the porcine and the bovine insulins, this can occur because of the other proteins which are present in them. Some patients have also described some edema because of sodium and water retention, and occasionally presbyopia has also been reported in patients who are on insulin. This is about the adverse effects of insulin. Now, the last bit for this class, drug interactions of insulin. So the drugs which cause hypoglycemia, they will increase the effect of insulin, and these include the other oral hypoglycemic drugs which you will be learning in the next chapters: beta blockers, ethanol, salicylates, lithium, theophylline. Then you have got drugs which cause hyperglycemia. They can decrease the effect of insulin. Diuretics like thiazides, furosemide, corticosteroids, oral contraceptive pills, nifedipine, and salbutamol. So this is about the insulin preparations. This is a very important part, and in the last part, we'll be discussing about the other aspects. That is mainly the uses of insulin and the newer devices by which insulin is administered. So before you come for the next class, please revise this part. This is the most important area of this topic. Okay, thank you.